happens. All right? You got an exemplary work ethic.
We saw him kind of doing a podcast. He sort of stopped. Looked like he was doing well.
Well, listen, I'm always in a rough spot here in terms of like privacy and stuff like that. But, and I do sometimes get in trouble when I talk about Artie, but I would tell you this, listen, he's sober and he's just trying to put it all together right now. And he's, when you had a long time of drugs and drinking and all that stuff, and you finally do cross over that barrier, it just takes you time to put it all together. He's got a loving family. They're supportive. He's got loving friends as well. He's got a loving fan base. And it's just a matter of him really kind of putting it all together. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and it's sad because you see him and he comes back and he looks good. And then kind of goes away, and then that becomes that, well, what happened, because it looked like he was doing well. So I assume or hope that he was.
He looks good. Obviously, he looks good. He's got a little nose issue that's got to be worked on, but he looks healthy. I mean, he's not really fat anymore, and looks good, except for the nose. And people always ask me, how's his nose? I'm like, well, he'll eventually get that worked on and stuff. So I'm probably saying too much. But listen, I love Artie. And anybody involved with Artie knows that. Matter of fact, I used to hate, and I'll say something. I don't care. I'm 57 years old. Where am I going? I used to hate, there was an Artie Lang before Howard Stern. There was an Artie Lang before Man TV. I worked with him in a sketch group. And Artie Lang was the funniest guy. He's the funniest guy I've ever met. Now, people talk about all the Howard Stern stuff. Okay. Yeah, he was great on Stern. I get that. But Artie was a force on the stage doing sketch comedy. That's why when he got to Mad TV, he probably had the least amount of experience. And he dominated that show, too. If you watch back the old sketches, and that cast is great people, but Artie was, listen, anytime Artie gets involved, he's like Michael Jordan. Sitting at the bar with Artie, we'd laugh. We would giggle. The two of us ended up sitting in the corner just laughing, imitating Yankee announcers, he's the funniest guy. Just forget about the TV work. He's the funniest guy I've ever met. And then, of course, he got Mad TV, which was awesome. And we went out there for the taping. We felt like somebody popped, somebody made it, which was cool. And then our show got signed by NBC. Live on Tape was the name of the show. We got a huge development deal to be on NBC on Friday nights and stuff, late at night sketch show. So the two of us, two jackasses from Jersey, came out of this, and Artie, and Artie was just kicking ass. But Artie ran into some personal, issues, and the rest is history. But he got on Stern, and he was just great on there. He was the #1 radio show of all time. And there's two kinds of people with Howard Stern. There's people that say, oh, I miss the old Jackie the Joke Man days. And then there's people that say, oh, the Artie Lang years on Stern were the best, by far. And I tend to agree with that. But I will say that I'm not a Howard Stern aficionado. I was not, if anything, I was listening to I Miss More in my house for whatever reason. I don't know why. My brother had it on. I don't even know. It just was AM radio, maybe. I don't even know. But I'd listen to it when I lived in L.A. when Artie was on. And Artie did a great job on that show. And his stand-up was great. And so, we could talk. I could talk about Artie till the cows come home. He's a good guy. He's got a loving soul, and many people have had interactions with him personally. We'll tell you, Artie's a good guy, But listen, people run into some problems, and they got to work them out. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah,
Good guy.
Yeah, we talked a little bit yesterday, about just, I've met him a few times. I'm not sure if he was under the influence at that time, but he was super sweet and super nice to me. The Dark Side of the Comedy thing came out, and he was featured. And I interviewed his author of his books, and my question that as I was watching, I was like, I wonder if Artie likes that this is happening or doesn't. What was his thoughts?
Yeah, Artie. Look, when that show came out, the producer contacted me, Dark Side of Comedy, and I was listening to her, and she was like, now I know what those shows are like. And I said to myself, no matter what I say, they can edit it to make it look like you could edit this show. What I just said, like what I just said about Artie in my mind is very loving. Okay, someone could interpret it differently, and I don't really care. I stand by what I said. I didn't say anything wrong in my mind. But when you edit it with facial expressions, and I know these shows, the only way to make money is to make Artie look like a fool. And what annoyed me about the show, this I will say, they had some people on that show that, like, they had a guy, one of the comedians from Mad TV. He wasn't on the show when Artie was there. So you might as well have on, anybody to talk about Artie Lang. You could have been on to talk about him. And they had a couple other people on the show that I was like, wow, these people don't know him. But Orlando Jones was the one guy who, he teared up and stuff. And I'm like, because I know I lived with Orlando for a couple of weeks, and so did Artie live with him for 2 years. Orlando Jones knows the deal, and he was honest, he was sweet, and he loves him too. I've become, somewhat friends with Orlando, and over the years, another good guy. But some of the people that were commenting on that show, I didn't think knew what the hell they were, and there was facts that were wrong. But those are the nature of those shows. I get it. I just decided I wanted nothing to do with that. And I'm very glad I did. Probably would have got a paycheck out of it. Artie probably would have told me, I told him afterwards, but he probably would have said, take the money, screw him, take the money. But he's a friend of mine. You don't do that. I think in the days of these social media, everybody doesn't have to know everything every 5 seconds. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like everybody just anyway, but he's a celebrity, a radio personality and Stern and all that. And, I don't know. I just, why do those kind of shows? It was just, plus it was I watched it. I almost shut it off because it was like, it just was hard for me to watch that because I know the guy really well,
It was sad. It really did it was sad and depressing, I would say. And we also talked about, right around that time, the Matthew Perry interview happened. And so there was all this basically talk about, addiction but his interview really, and we talked about this yesterday, I realized how hard it is to be an addict because of that detox. Once you're on something, you can't get off it, and the only thing that makes it feel better is more. And I was meant to mention to you, like, I've never had any sort of addiction that I know of, except for maybe caffeine. And when I have to get off caffeine, I am effed.
Yesterday, and I'm drinking coffee, and I said, Brad told me yesterday, no way I get off caffeine. But it's even more than that. I think you're right about addictions. Obviously heroin is a tough one. But, anything you do every day and then you don't have it every day, that's a change. And you could take that as far as, like, if you've been married for 40 years and then your spouse dies, not that you were addicted to your spouse, but you're used to having that element in your life, and now it's gone. Or you stop drinking coffee, and it definitely takes, I think they say 30 days or 60 days to form a new habit, whatever. There's some kind of scientific thing. But yeah, I mean, even drinking, I think when you get older, you always feel like, I got to cut down on the beers. I think most people feel that way. But then you go out with your friends. You go out to a nice restaurant. And next thing you know, you're having wine. In other words, it's social. There's a lot of things like that. So yeah, addiction is not easy, man. And you can always go back. The only problem with heroin is, I was told this by a counselor, if you stop drinking and you're sober for 2 years, and then you have a couple glasses of wine, right? Your neighbors may know it, your wife may know it. Something, hey, I noticed you've been drinking again, blah, blah, blah. But you're only doing like 30 miles an hour, and it takes a while for it to take hold again. Heroin, when you stopped, you were doing 150 miles an hour, and then you stop for 3 years, and the minute you go back, you're right back to 150 miles an hour again. And then with the crap that's mixed in this stuff, people die. Many people 2 months out of rehab die from heroin because they go back and their body can't handle it. So heroin's a little bit of a different egg, but yeah, it's Matthew Perry. I mean, my God. I mean, I did an episode of Friends. I don't even know if you know that. I did one of the biggest ones. Jennifer Aniston has the baby. It was a big one. I met all those guys. They were so calm and relaxed. See, I'm segueing off Artie Lang. No, but Matthew Perry, here's a guy worth, I mean, I know what I make from my one episode in residuals. I can only imagine just the residuals alone. Plus, they were making 1.5 or 1.2 million dollars an episode. He's super loaded, and but drinking and drugs got a hold of him. And so it doesn't matter whether you're a garbage man, a postman, an actor, a star. Once these things grab hold of you, you need family support. You need good, it's a whole process after that. But yeah, I watched that interview. I'm like, and Matthew Perry to me still looks messed up. I think he's still on drugs. That's what I felt anyway. But it's just a crazy thing,
Yeah. And lastly on Artie, have you talked? When was the last time you talked to him? And how's his mother? I love his mom. I love the stories.
Listen, his mom's doing well. She's a great lady. Look, she's been through a lot with Artie, and they're cool. And Artie's sister they're doing good, but they're struggling with it as well. It's a hard thing, but she's good. She's getting older now, of course, and but she's doing good. She's doing good. She looks good too. She always was she's a sweet lady. I talk to her and her sister more than I do Artie. Artie sometimes, you have to send a bunch of texts for him to finally get back to you. But I talked to Artie, I guess it was 2 months ago, something like that. And so he showed up at one of my stand-up shows, which was really cool. But that was maybe 8-9 months ago. I did a show in Hoboken. He showed up, and the cool part about it was all the younger comics that were there were like, "Holy, oh my God, Artie Lang's here!" They were going up to him, and I told him, I was like, "Art, so many, not only your friends and family love you, that's a given." I said, but there's a lot of young comics that were listening to Stern. When I say a young comic, 28-year-old, so they were 15 listening to Stern, and they love you. They idolize you. And it's I think it made him feel good. For sure, and I hope he's back someday.
Yeah.
So that's that. That concludes the Artie Lang version of the long interview. But I don't mind talking about Artie. I mean, I'm not trying to. Some people say, "Oh, look at this guy." There was some things on Facebook one time that on one of the Artie Lang superfan pages, and they said like, "Oh, there's another guy still trying to cash in on Artie," and I'm like, man, that's not really what's going on here. But I get it. If you didn't know me and you didn't know my world, you could say, "Oh, look at this guy," but it's really not that at all. I mean, I've been on a bunch of films and TV shows myself, so I've carved out my own career. Still in the business myself. I've just happened to be an old time friend of Artie. I met him in 1990. That's a long time ago. Yeah. So, and Artie would, if someone stuck a microphone in Artie's face and said my name, he would, it wouldn't be like, "Oh, I remember him." It's not like that. You know what I mean? But I still love him, and as many do, and hopefully he'll be back soon.
Yeah, we all do. Now, what's the problem with Larry David? Let's talk about his issues. No, I some of the things that you've done, you mentioned